Hello, Muni.
Richie, you look like your mother this morning. Might be the camera angle.
Well, it would make sense.
With your jaw. Yeah, get your quick.
Okay. This morning, what I thought we would do is kind of like an experiential meditation on refuge. Um, so let's get right into it. Again, then we'll get to the Nagarjuna. So, as you recall, there is a posture that Geshe-Nima gave us, this 7-point posture. Basically, what you really want to do is keep your spine straight, so that the air can flow freely, and the channels through which the prana, they call it prana energy, runs through the energy system of your body and connects with your chakras. So just breathe in and out through your nose and follow the breath as it comes in, fills the diaphragm, releases, goes out, and then it turns around again, comes back in, fills the diaphragm and releases. Just follow that, keep following, tracking that. Imagine in the space in front of you, slightly above you, is a large lotus of light upon which there is a red bodhicitta disc. It's a flat, like a wafer of light, of red light. And this red disc represents the wisdom that realizes the nature of reality.
Can you speak up a little? Sorry.
The red disc on top of the lotus throne represents the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Then on top of that red disk of light, like another wafer on top of it, is a white disk of light. This white disk represents the unconditional love of bodhicitta, the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Seated on top of this disk, imagine your guru, the teacher who you have a very strong, heartfelt connection to. This is very important because emotion matters in our meditation. It matters in our visualizations. Emotion will drive the winds, will move the winds. And we're talking now here about very, very positive emotion. So this is someone, a teacher, guru, spiritual friend, someone who you have a great deal of love for. It could be Geshe-Nima, could be Venerable Robina, it could be teachers who have passed on, it could be Lama Yeshe, it could be Lama Zopa, it could be His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Whoever you feel a really strong heart connection to, imagine that that guru is seated on top of the white and red sun discs, moon and sun discs. Look into their face, look into their eyes, and feel such a sense of gratitude that they found you. And that they're here to help you. Your guru, this spiritual friend, is the representative of the Buddha in our life. There is no other Buddha but our guru who represents that Buddha to us. So now above your guru, imagine Shakyamuni Buddha. And light from Shakyamuni Buddha streaming down to your guru, completely filling your guru's body. At the heart of your guru now is Shakyamuni Buddha. And that Shakyamuni Buddha comes to you, comes to the crown of your head, and dissolves into you. So that you now feel as if Shakyamuni Buddha is part of you, superimposed over you. And you feel that you have the light body of Shakyamuni Buddha. Your right hand is touching the ground or the seat in front of you. Your left hand is holding a bowl of beautiful white nectar. The left hand touching the ground represents the Buddha's overcoming all afflictive emotions, all cognitive obscurations. The white nectar represents the love, compassion, and wisdom of the Buddha. This is what the Buddha offers us. The Buddha is a guide that offers us release from all of our suffering, liberation from ignorance and the cycles of ignorance that bind us, and the bliss and joy of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. This is what we're taking refuge in. We're taking refuge in the clear and safe guidance of an enlightened being who only wants to help us. And the reason is that we are connected. We are interconnected with all beings, and therefore we are connected to the Buddha. So the Buddha's mantra is Om Muni, Muni, Maha Muniye, Soha. Om represents the essence of existence. That essence is that it is constantly transforming, constantly changing, constantly moving in cycles. So go back to your breath and focus on that. Your breath is actually a microcosm of the entire universe. As you take in your breath and you fill up with air, and then watch the breath release slowly. And then the breath comes in again. The universe is like this. Universes come into being, they grow and expand, then they decrease, they go out of existence and come back into existence, and keep cycling and cycling and cycling. Consciousness is like this. Our lifetimes are like this. A moment is like this. If you think of your breath, it is a definitely a dependent co-arising. We feel as if, oh, this is just my breath, but not when you analyze it. We're taking in oxygen from the world around us, bringing it into our body through our lungs. It goes through our blood system. And then when we release our breath, we're releasing carbon dioxide back into the biosphere, which connects us to everything. The world around us, the plants, the atmosphere, the sun, the solar system, and all galaxies. We are completely interconnected through our breath with all that appears to us. So the first word in the mantra is Om. And it represents this constant transformation, constant movement. It's 3 syllables, Au, or Ma. So as you breathe in, you can think to yourself or silently say to yourself, or breathe in Ah. As you let the air out, you can breathe out Ooh. And as the breath is coming to its end, you close to and you bring it up to your crown. Do this a few times. Be aware now of how you are interconnected with the world around you through your breath. In Buddhism, Om refers to the transformational nature of our consciousness, that we can transform our body, speech, and mind from an ordinary body, speech, and mind to an enlightened body, speech, and mind. And this is due to causes and conditions. Because we are interdependent, we can generate and bring in the causes and conditions that will take us from an ordinary being to an enlightened being. Om is the first syllable of Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha, of Buddha Shakyamuni's mantra. The next syllables are Mani. Muni is repeated through 3 times. Muni, Muni, Maha Muniye. Muni refers to a sage or a saint who has realized the nature of reality through their own experience. This was the case with Shakyamuni Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama was from the Shakya clan, and so he was named Shakyamuni, sage of the Shakya clan. So the first Muni refers to the path that the Buddha was on, and this refers to our path as well. The first Muni refers to control over the suffering, experiencing the suffering of the lower realms, and the misconception of a self-existent I. So the first stage of Buddha Shakyamuni's path was overcoming the suffering of the lower realms, not to be reborn in the lower realms anymore, and to have an understanding of that there is no self-existent I. The second Muni is control over samsara itself, the ability to become liberated from the trap of cyclic existence, which keeps us going around and around and around in a suffering kind of existence. And it refers to overcoming the subtle delusions in the mind and having a realization of the non-duality of self, or having a realization of the emptiness of the self itself. So that would be liberation from samsara. That's the second Muni. And the third Muni, the great Muni, Maha Muniye, is the enlightenment that the Buddha achieved. This is more than just a realization of emptiness. This was a removal of all the subtle delusions in the mind and a direct realization of the non-duality of self and other. So when we say this mantra, Om means we can transform. Muni, we can overcome the suffering of the lower realms and continue to have fortunate rebirths in samsara so we can continue on our spiritual path. Maha Muniye means we can attain enlightenment through this spiritual path. And then the final word in the mantra is Soha. And what that means is, may the blessings of this mantra, may I absorb these blessings, bring them into my mind, and may these blessings stay with me. So let's say this mantra 7 times, thinking of all of this, imagining Buddha Shakyamuni is with us, superimposed over us. Our guru is out there in front of us. Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Soha. 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 As we continue now, feel the love you have for your guru. Feel the gratitude you have for your guru and the Buddha and the Buddhist path and what it means to your life and your happiness and your relationships. Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Soha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Soha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Soha. So as Buddhists, when we're taking refuge, this is what we're taking refuge in. We're taking refuge in the wisdom of the Buddha, the love and compassion of the Buddha, the path that the Buddha has laid out for us. I think sometimes we don't totally understand, because how can we? We are not an enlightened being. But to understand that this pathway that's being presented comes directly from an enlightened mind. And it is designed for minds like ours to be able to follow step by step by step by step over time until we have all of the realizations. We remove all of our obstacles. We purify all of our negativities in our mind stream. And we're able ourselves to reach enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. That's what refuge is in the Buddhist path. So it's really a huge thing. And it's important sometimes to really think about that and feel it rather than just, recite it like it's a prayer, because it's a powerful thing. Okay, any questions about that or the meaning of the mantra or any of that, or comments on it.
Um, could you just, in as few words as possible, differentiate between the red disc and the white disc? Because what I heard you say, it sounded like you were saying they were both bodhicitta.
No, well, but they sometimes call them both bodhicitta discs.
Yeah.
Bodhicitta, you
But
can
which
either have
one-
ultimate bodhicitta or conventional
one-
bodhicitta. One is wisdom. The red one is wisdom.
I thought it was the other way around.
No, red one is wisdom. White represents the unconditional love of bodhicitta.
Okay, thanks.
But they do refer to them both as bodhicitta discs because there is ultimate bodhicitta, which is wisdom, the wisdom that realizes emptiness.
Yeah, yeah.
And conventional bodhicitta, which is this unconditional love for all beings. And that's what our guru is seated on.
Thank you.
Those discs. Yeah. Yeah, that can be quite confusing.
And what is the purpose of visualizing that?
For me, the purpose when you bring it onto your own body, you superimpose, say, like
I'm talking about the red and the white discs.
well, that's there. It's just light, and it represents that the guru is being supported by the wisdom that realizes emptiness and this unconditional love of bodhicitta.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, this is the support of it. If you know many of the tangas that you see, there'll be a lotus disc, then there'll be a white moon disc and a red, or a red sun disc and a white moon disc.
And similarly, then the that which we are working towards, we similarly are seated on a red and white.
Right. We would think of ourselves that way. Yeah.
Same fact.
That is the support for us on this path. It's you could say, wisdom and compassion.
Yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
handy to say.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But compassion also, when you think of Buddha Chenrezig, which is an emanation of Buddha, the Buddha Shakyamuni, everything comes. The reason why you can use Buddha Shakyamuni as your refuge visualization, just that one figure, is that every other Buddha and all your gurus are contained within Buddha Shakyamuni. That's the whole lineage. Everything is contained within Buddha Shakyamuni. That's what Buddha Shakyamuni represents to us.
In that way, would you say that the entire lineage is contained in or represented in your, say, the Lama or the Guru
Yes.
that you know in this lifetime? Same concept.
When we think about our Guru properly, yes, that is it. The Guru is the representation for us in this world of appearances that we have of the Buddha. And the entire, incredible lineage of enlightened minds and highly realized beings who have clarified the Buddha's path to us through the centuries, Nagarjuna being one of the greatest examples in terms of the wisdom teachings. But if I was going to say, if you think of Buddha Chenrezig, what you have is what we're commonly think of as the four immeasurables: love, compassion, immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, immeasurable equanimity. That's all represented in this figure that you imagine. So these mantras, it's a combination. Lama Yeshe says that mantras are effective, very effective, when it's combined with visualization of the particular deity or Buddha that mantra is representing, and a very strong emotional feeling. Because that emotion is necessary. We can't just do it like it's rote or some cold prayer that we're just reciting. We have to feel that connection. So, for instance, Chenrezig is white, 4 arms. There are 2 hands, and they're holding a jewel, like right here, right over the heart chakra. And this jewel is blue, and what this jewel represents, this is Mani, Om Mani. Starts again, Om, same thing. We can transform, Om. Then there's Mani. Mani refers to the jewel of what we are. It is our It is our capacity to transform from where we are now all the way to an enlightened being. Every sentient being has this capacity. What it is called is Buddha nature. It's in our nature. It's like a seed, an apple seed, has within its nature the capacity to become an apple, a beautiful, wonderful apple. Well, our seed, our nature is Buddha nature. It's not that we start out as Buddhas, but we have that capacity, the nature of who we are. We have the capacity to transform and change through dependent arisings and the right causes and conditions, all the way to become an enlightened being for the benefit of all other beings. So that's what the Mani represents in the Om Mani Padme Hum. And then Chenrezig also has a mala, crystal mala, which is constantly moving, and that's sending out immeasurable joy to all sentient beings. And really, what immeasurable joy is the realization that all sentient beings can achieve enlightenment. Enlightenment is immeasurable joy. There's no joy beyond the joy of enlightenment. And then enlightenment that's for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then whom Padme is the lotus. So the Chenrezig is holding the lotus in the left hand. And that represents how we can transform from where we are now into the muck and mire of our ego self-grasping and ignorance, out of the mud, and rise to become this beautiful lotus. This is we can become enlightened. And then that's our nature, who we are. Hum. It's the essence of who we are. So all these mantras have a lot of meaning, and a lot of meaning for the whole path that we're on. And when you use these mantras and you visualize, the deity, really, if you take the deity and superimpose it over yourself, as if the deity is there or the Buddha is there and coaching you in you can how you can think about these particular mantras and how you can think about yourself going through this path, then they become very powerful. When you put in the emotion of your connection to your guru, a really heartfelt connection and incredible gratitude that you found them and they found you, the mantras become a very, very powerful pathway. It's part of the Vajra pathway, mantra yana. And so it's good for us to practice that some. Anyway, I thought it would be good to do something experiential like that before we get into the weeds of Nagarjuna, because the emptiness teachings can be a little mind-bending. I think what I'll do is go over the last time we talked about this was 2 weeks ago. Last week was Tracy's memorial, and I want to thank everybody who contributed to that. It was a beautiful thing, and it was very, very nice. And we now have a living mandala, and Tracy's ashes are in there. It's on the property, and there's a beautiful
Shall I
female
share that
Buddha.
photo?
Do you have a photo? Yeah, if you can share it.
Let me just share a few photos from the thingy.
Okay.
Not many.
I'm going to edit out. There's a whole bunch of meaningless talk at
There
the
was a
beginning.
recording of the ceremony or the service, I guess, for lack of a.
Yeah, so I'll edit out all the stuff at the beginning and then send it out in one of the emails, a video of the memorial.
Oh. Well,
You can't find it?
I promised something I can't deliver.
Okay, well we can do it later.
The photos do not seem to have uploaded. Okay.
Okay, so just to sort of briefly go over what we talked about 2 weeks ago. We talked about how the world that we see, the world that appears to us, appears to us via our aggregates, the five aggregates as Buddha laid them out. So we have our senses, our physical senses, and the sense consciousnesses that go with those. So we have an eye sense consciousness, an ear sense consciousness, nose sense, taste sense, touch sense, and mental sense. So we take in all of these streams of information through the particular vehicle that we have. We have a human body, human brain, a human vehicle, and it takes in all of these streams of information in a particular way. And then when our mental continuum, which is personal to us, unique to us, which contains all our habitual, we carry in our mental continuum all of our habitual propensities, both positive, negative, and neutral. And so when something appears to us, one of these streams, sound, smell, taste, touch, we then, through our mental continuum, project onto that all the meaning that it has for us. And we respond to it in a positive way or a negative way, depending on our particular habits and propensities. So everybody's view of the world is based on how the world appears to them via their aggregates and their mental continuum. And so everyone's view of the world is unique and different to them. We're just talking about humans. And we know that for a fact with humans. Some humans will love a particular kind of music, some humans will hate it. Why? It's not from the side of the music, it's from the side of the human. It's from the side of the side of the consciousness it's appearing to. So then we talked about how if you take other species, I think we talked last time about a mosquito. Mosquito has a completely different kind of brain, completely different aggregates, eyes that see things in a completely different way. And so the consciousness of a mosquito sees and experiences an entirely different world than a human does. So, and you can keep going on with all kinds of species. And this will be the same. It will be the case. There is no objective, inherently fixed reality of a world out there. Does that make sense? That's good. That's good that we at least can get that intellectually and see the logic of that. Science helps us a great deal with that because science is telling us how bugs see and flies see and mosquitoes experience things. So I think it's clear to us that the world that we each perceive is unique to us and it has a lot to do with our habits, the way we think, the way we feel, and that is all a dependent arising. And it is not fixed. We can change that. If we don't like the world that is appearing to us, we can change that by how we change our thoughts, our speech, our actions, our habits. From ones that are, I would say, destructive to ones that are beneficial. And this is the basic level of the Buddhist path. The Buddhists would call it ethics, but it's very profound the way the Buddha presents these. So we talked about that. We talked about how cyclic existence and nirvana they're not fixed, inherently existing things. They're not like cyclic existence is not like some kind of place somewhere, and nirvana is some place somewhere else, and they have this inherent fixed existence. Samsara is bad and nirvana is good. Samsara is this cyclic existence that arises due to consciousnesses being, I want to use the right words. I am disliking the words wrong and right. So when we say, we're wrong, we have a wrong conception, we have a right conception. I think what Lama Yeshe uses is realistic or unrealistic. So if we have an unrealistic view of reality, that means we're experiencing everything in a mistaken way because it's unrealistic. And so everything we are doing are grasping at something out there to feed me and feed my ego and make me happy is a total misunderstanding of what's going on, of the nature of reality. So we talked about this. So this is what cyclic existence is. It is a misunderstanding of reality. And through that misunderstanding of reality, consciousnesses have gotten themselves deeper and deeper and deeper into this fixed existence. Like there's a fixed I, me, and there's a fixed you, and there's a fixed objective world out there. And it's not that way at all. It doesn't exist that way at all. And this is what the Buddhist path gradually, it dawns on us. The logic of it dawns on us. And we understand that, oh, things don't actually exist that way. So nirvana is the cessation of that unrealistic view that causes all that suffering, unnecessary suffering. So nirvana and samsara are, you could say, mutually dependent. Nirvana arises as a cessation of samsara. There would be no need for nirvana without samsara. And samsara, would make no sense if you could never ever cease it and just continue to suffer all the time. You can stop it. This is what the Buddha's message was. There's a pathway to end this suffering. So we talked about that, how nirvana and samsara are an example of mutual dependence. They codependently arise. One does not exist inherently or fixed without the other. What else do we talk about? We talked about how things come into what appears to us that things are produced, they remain for a certain amount of time, and then they cease. So the way we think of, say, a plant, we think that you plant a seed, the sprout comes up, the plant grows, and then the plant dies. And we kind of think of it in three big chunks: produced, remaining for a period of time, and then ceasing. We think of our lives this way: we're produced, we remain for a period of time, then we cease. What Nagarjuna is saying, what the Buddha is saying, and that's not the case. It's not three chunks like that. It's moment to moment. It's continually changing. There is no inherent production, inherent staying, and inherent ceasing. It's continually, moment by moment, changing and changing and transforming due to causes and conditions. So what that means for us is that as we change the causes and conditions in our lives, as we change our unrealistic habitual propensities and our unrealistic habits and align those habits with reality, then we're going to generate causes for something that is much more in alignment with reality and will be beneficial. It'll be a good experience for us and a good experience for those around us. Then let's see, what else did we talk about? All right, I think that's as far as we got. We had a lot of discussion. So now we're continuing. And now what Nagarjuna is doing here is he's refuting some philosophies that assert inherent existence. And these were philosophies that existed at the time of Nagarjuna, and they still exist today, surprisingly. I mean, really surprisingly. So what the first philosophy is called the Vaisheshikas. It's a school of Hindu philosophy that, and it still exists today. Vaisheshikas it's one of the largest sects of Buddhism. I mean, Hinduism. And what the Vaisheshikas assert is they're followers of atomism, belief in particles. What's the Hadron Collider all about? It's trying to break everything down and find the smallest particle. I think they dubbed it the God particle at one point. We're looking for that God particle. What's the beginning of everything? The particle that. So this is still going on, And it was going on at the time of Nagarjuna with the Vaisheshikas. So here's the and Nagarjuna is going to refute this idea that things can be broken down into inherently existing particles, and that you're going to find one partless particle that is the origin of everything, you know? So here's what the text says, which will have to be, decoded. So it's stanza 66. It says, if always changing, how are things non-momentary? Non-momentary is another word for permanent. So what it's saying is things are always changing. How can they be permanent? If things are always changing, how can they be permanent? And the next line is, if they're not changing, in other words, if they are permanent, how can they actually be altered? There's no way how could they be changed? So if always changing, how are things non-momentary and permanent or permanent? If not changing, how can they be altered in fact? The next line is 67. It says, do they become permanent through partial or complete disintegration? And that's going to take some explanation in the commentary. Because an inequality is not apprehended, this momentariness cannot be admitted either way. So really, that might as well be code. I don't know what it says, right? I mean, I was reading this degree last night. I said, can you make any sense of this? She says, I don't know what you're talking about. So let's...
Some of it was clear, and then suddenly you realize, I don't.
Well, particularly the last thing I just read.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. So here, Nagarjuna, he goes into a couple of side discussions on, first is the Vaisheshikas, and then there's another, they're called Vaishnavas that he's going to go into. The Vaisheshikas are proponents of atomism, a natural philosophy proposing that the physical universe is composed of fundamental, indivisible components known as atoms, which comes from Greek atomon, which means indivisible. That's what atom means. The Vaisheshikas say to Nagarjuna, the arguments above regarding not existing in the three times, past, present, and future, so not existing inherently in the three times, so past, present, and future all are flowing momentarily one into the other. Actually, what we really have is nothing but an ever-present now. And we, through our mental continuum, bring the past into the now, bring the past into the now, bring the future into the now. But all we ever experience is now. If you think about it, you'll recognize that's true. That's all we ever experience is present moment. If we're experiencing, that's all we're experiencing is the now. So they say, how the arguments regarding not existing in three times, past, present, and future, apply to those who say that functioning things arise and disintegrate. The Vaisheshikas say we don't have that fault because we accept that the tiniest particles composing all matter are inherently permanent and fixed. They're not produced and they're not destroyed. Nagarjuna replies to this. He says, do all things change or don't they? I mean, as we look around, do all things change or don't they? If they do change, then the tiniest particles are not permanent. They are momentary, they are produced through causes and conditions, and they perish. If things don't change, then how could they become different than they were? This is just logic. How could the natural changes from childhood to adolescence occur if none of the atoms changed, none of the particles changed? How could you become, go from a baby to a senior citizen? And we see this all the time. It would be absurd to think that they could not change because our bodies would be composed of inherently permanent atoms. Inherently permanent atoms. it actually doesn't make sense at all, because something that is inherently permanent cannot interact with anything else. If you follow it to its logical conclusion, something that is permanent means it can't change, it can't interact with something, because by interacting with something, it changes. Whenever anything interacts with anything else, a change occurs. So permanent particles means they are fixed, they can't change, they actually couldn't move and interact with one another. When you follow the logic of it. Hearing this, then, the Vaisheshikas change their assertion to Nagarjuna, and they say the tiniest particles are inherently existent and inherently momentary. So Nagarjuna says, do they completely change or only partially change? If a particle has one part that changes and another part that doesn't change, then when we look at a plant, for example, we should see that one part of the plant continues on unchanged, and another part of that plant changes and grows and dies. So it'd be like you had a bean plant, and the stalk is rising, and there's one bean hanging on the bean plant. All the other beans grow. They, if you don't pick them and eat them, then they just wither away and they die, and the stalk dies. But you're still left with this permanent bean that never, ever, ever changes, ever. He says that's not. You don't see that. That's not what's actually occurring out there in the world. This does not happen. And that would be, if you're saying that you can have a permanent, if you can have a permanent particle that is momentary, it is like, it's canceling itself out. You're not making sense. This is what the Vaisheshikas are saying. On the other hand, he says, if the tiniest particles change completely in every way, then how could they exist inherently? Vaisheshikas, inherently existent things can't change. So Nagarjuna is pointing out two faults in the Vaisheshika's position, which I would say is a position that still exists today among certain scientific communities, that things do exist in that way, that particles do exist, that they inherently exist. We're finding now through our science that a lot of, when you get down to the tiniest particles, everything seems to disappear. You have I think the tiniest thing they found so far are biophotons, and they can't even make sense of them. But they know there's a lot going on there with them. So it's, the current physics is helping us change our view of existence. And the way we think things inherently exist the way they appear to us. Current science is actually helping us. So here, now we're going on to the next group. The next group are called the Vaishnavas. And here's the next stanza. It says, if momentary, mean if things are momentary, meaning they just only exist for the moment, and then becomes entirely non-existent, then it becomes entirely non-existence. Hence, how could it be old? This is what the Vaisheshikas are saying, old. And by old, they mean primordial, without a beginning or an end. How could something be without a beginning or an end if it's momentary? Also, if it's not momentary, if it's permanent, it's constant. And how could then it be old or primordial without a beginning or an end? So the Vaishnavas say that their assertions don't have the faults of the Vaisheshikas, because they assert that the person is permanent and old, meaning permanent and primordial, without a beginning or an end, sort of like a soul, the way certain kinds of religions will talk about the soul, is that soul is like this permanent thing that never, it's my soul, it doesn't change. It's, and it's no beginning, no end. Nagarjuna replies that an inherently existing person that is impermanent and momentary would completely cease in each moment, and a totally new person would arise in the next moment. In that case, how could the body possibly grow old? On the other hand, if an inherently existent person was permanent, in other words, non-momentary, permanent, then that person couldn't change and would remain as they were before. In that case, how can they be considered old without a beginning or an end? To be old, a person must have arisen, changed, and declined, and only an impermanent person that changes from moment to moment can do that. Therefore, the person can't be permanent. Also, if a person was permanent, they could be unhappy. They couldn't be unhappy in the morning and then happy in the afternoon. They would be consistently one thing, permanent, unchanging. So a 10-year-old Dawn would be the exact same person as 70-year-old Dawn. Dawn's birthday is tomorrow, which is why I'm bringing it up. But that's just not the case. We know that. We know that. We know that when we think of ourselves when we were 10 years old, we know we are not the same person. We can see there's a continuum there. You can see that there's been change and growth and modification and all kinds of things going on, but it's not the same exact 10-year-old. We change. We're not permanent. This is actually great news. It's great news. It means it goes back to Om, the transformative nature of everything. And the fact that we have this Buddha nature that has the capacity through correct, realistic causes and conditions rather than delusionary causes and conditions can attain complete enlightenment and happiness and benefit all sentient beings. That is the nature of who we are and what we can accomplish. And we should never forget that. We should remember how wonderful our capacity is and the nature that we have. And so when we're, feeling really bad about ourselves or down, or we feel like we've, it's the end of the rope, or we're very depressed, we should remember that it will change. Things change. We can change. All we have to do is change our mind, change our thinking, change our behavior, and go in a realistic direction. Not this poor me, isolated, unconnected, thing, which we tend to do. This is all of our suffering rises from an unrealistic view. The Vaishnavas and other non-Buddhists don't assert a permanent person for no reason. They've thought a lot about it and give reasons for their assertions. Whether those reasons hold up when challenged is another matter. If a person is impermanent, they say, how can the person who creates karma be the one who experiences the result? If the person who creates the action or the karma changes from moment to moment to moment, then an entirely different person would experience the results. Now, we know from our own experience, like I said, we're not the same 10-year-old as the person we are now. But we also know that we understand our actions have an effect, our karma. We are aware of the karma in our life. We are aware of the positive actions that we generate and the positive results that come from that. And we're aware of the negative or unrealistic actions we generate. And then the suffering or the pain that comes from that because it's out of alignment with the nature of reality. But that is occurring within a mental continuum. And that mental continuum is always changing, growing. We're always changing and growing. So it's the mental continuum upon which the karma is generated and the karma has its effect. Not on a impermanent moment to moment, person. Because the way the Vaishnavas are looking at impermanent moment to moment is they're thinking, well, that you have, a new person here and a new person here and a new person here. So they're just taking permanence and putting it into momentariness. rather than seeing it as a
Yeah.
fluid flow, a continuum. What we are is a continuum. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, I just mentioned, as I often do, the metaphors that I find particularly helpful is like thinking about a river and knowing, you're there watching the flow of the river, and you still call it the river. This is the Mississippi River or the San Antonio River.
Right.
Here's the San Antonio River. Here's Cavita. All these particles of water and the causes and conditions of the weather and everything that's changing the water
All the time.
all the time.
All the time.
That's Covita
Right.
or Don or Christopher or Lee or whoever.
And for some reason, what we tend to do is objectify things like that. We objectify the San Antonio River, and we have a view of what it is and that it doesn't actually change the way, moment to moment, the way it actually does. We do the same with people.
This is kind of a weird little tangential related thought that I've been chewing on the last few weeks since Tracy passed away, which is in the Tracy that I experienced was experienced at the level of my consciousness. So there was various sense objects, the physical particles and the sound waves of this entity river called Tracy. And I think I'm wondering, is there any difference between the Tracy that I thought I was experiencing when she was alive, through my mental continuum, or the Tracy that I recollect just sitting here and Tracy's somewhere else?
That you're pulling out of your mental
Something
continuum.
like that. What is the difference between those two Tracys?
Is somebody trying to comment, or is that just a...
Well, that was me. I was going to say my gut says, yeah, they're absolutely different. In the same way that Geshe Nima says the Brian that walked through the door and the Brian that's sitting down are two entirely different Brians for your consciousness. So yeah, the one in your memory is entirely different. In other words, because again, there never is an inherently unchanging core self-existent Tracy. Never was. That's the mistake we make. Which doesn't mean she didn't exist. She doesn't exist. It just means not the way. I think we're grasping for it to be the same every moment, but I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Yes.
It reminded me, Brian, of one time when Geshe Drakpa was visiting. And for those of you who don't remember Geshe Drakpa or never knew him, he was our teacher for quite a few years, came to San Antonio on 7 or so occasions, and stayed for many months, and some of us consider him our guru. Well, one time, feeling kind of very attached and dependent on him, I asked him in kind of desperation, Geshe Drakpa, how will I find you in my next life? Thinking, and he just looked at me like, I'm going to swear, you dumb fuck. He just looked at me and went, I'm not coming back. And of course that threw me into like, what does that mean? Well, there's no returning Geshe Drakpa with this, there's this continuum. And I think how amazing and skillful his response to me was, because it's now given me 20 years of thinking still on his answer. But anyway, I just thought I would share that. And also then the almost the opposite thing he would say was, well, we may not be together in San Antonio, but our hearts and minds are always connected.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we, like you know, you were saying, Brian, we tend to want to lock them down and say, okay, this is the Tracy that was alive, and now this is the Tracy in my mind. Well, there was never either one. So here's this dilemma that we want to pin something down.
Well, make it literal. Like,
We do. I don't know if anybody in this Zoom call was there. This is many years ago. I'll use something else. But Geshe Tupten Dorji, who has visited a few times, he's in Arkansas where Lama Kusong is now.
oh yeah.
And he was giving a talk in our living room, and he was talking about how we tend to concretize things. And for some reason, this stuck with those of us that were there. He grabs a chair and goes, "It's a chair." We want to
Well,
say,
he
"It's
actually-
a chair."
He grabbed the lamp that's behind you, and he was
this lamp.
shaking it, saying,
He was
"It's a
also-
lamp."
This is a lamp. Anyway.
Well, you
Yeah,
know
we
what?
are. And we so we're caught between these two. I mean, this is why. Yeah,
We got what's striking me is that this is where we get into problems in our relationships, is because we see another person and say, that's the way they are. The way I think they are is the way they are, and we kind of hold that onto them when in actuality we are all constantly shifting and changing. We have the capacity to change in very amazing ways, and yet in our relationships we tend to hold people. We figure out who they are, we think we know who they are, we think we've got them all figured out, and then we project that onto them and we hold them to it. And this is where the problems arise in our relationships. We're not as fluid as we could be. We could be very fluid with one another. It's not just a one-sided thing. And in so doing, we could be very open, we could be open-minded, we could be open-hearted, we could be understanding, compassionate. All of these things could be part of every relationship we have if we didn't try to lock down onto each person or being. This is what you are. This is what you are. I've got you figured out. We think we're so smart. We've got everybody figured out. We don't. We don't. It's all in our own mind. There's another thing that in our own mind, I'm thinking of something that Lama Yeshe said. And a lot of us worry about this. We worry about, oh, wow, I've been such a bad person. I'm going to go to a hell realm, blah, blah, blah. And Lama Yeshe said, there is no inherently existing anything. There's no inherently existing hell, inherently existing evil. All of that is of your own mind. He says, so you can change that. I'm thinking about, the death, the bardo state. He says, if you find yourself in a confusing state in the bardo, and he said, and you will, that is the nature of what intermediate state is. Well, then generate yourself as Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. You change who you are, you change how you're viewing all of this, and view everything with love, compassion, immeasurable joy, immeasurable, equanimity. That you see everything in the hell realm, every being is capable, has that Buddha nature. And he says it changes everything. None of this exists inherently. None of the things we see going on in the world right now have an inherent fixed existence. It can change, but we have to be the ones. It has to start with us. It has to start with our mind, our view, how we look at it all. Because what world are we experiencing other than our view of it? Each one of us. So, there's some line, be the change that you want to see in the world.
Yeah, Gandhi.
Yeah,
See the change that you want to.
well, that's so true, because the world we see is via our own consciousness. So we are the ones that have to change. We're always trying to change what's out there.
It's tricky too. I'm sure lots of us struggle with this because, it's a very fine line between that openness to change and perception that we're creating our world and honestly a kind of delusion because it's like we have to be very careful because things still function. And in other words, I guess kind of what I'm getting at is like oh, well, if I create the world and I can just step out in front of a car and if I just, visualize it as this particleless thing, like I'm not going to get run over, but it doesn't work that way either.
Right.
Our perceptions are to, if not entirely, to some degrees forced upon us by our karma. And so it's this slow process, I think, of realize. I don't know. I struggle with that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is because I've struggled with it in particular in relation to how I view teachers. Because it can be a dangerous, and they talk about this a lot.
Mhm.
Dangerous in terms of seeing them as completely pure versus where I'm going with that. It's just it can be tricky, but the more important point I think is, like you said, is just creating an opening for understanding that things can change or perceptions of people are not fixed. Nobody's personality is their anger, their hatred, their all of that is modifiable over.
Yeah,
And
you're making actually a good point though about you can go too far, like you say, like walk in front of a car, thinking it can't run me over, right? We have to take the entire Buddhist path has this element of wisdom, which is huge. The wisdom when we have to understand the nature of reality. We have to understand what he's talking about when he's talking about the non-duality of self and other. So it's a great amount of meditation and process and development to understand this wisdom path. It can't just be a path of love and compassion. I'm open, I love you, I see you, and it can't just be that because that's not stable. It's not stable. When you see a teacher who has combined that compassion with the stability of the wisdom, it's almost like they're a little superhuman. There's something else going on with them because they have reached such a high level. I think of his holiness that way. Uh,
yeah, and there are, I don't want to say stories, but in some of the higher texts, recently where they're sort of talking about, a student is talking with one that I recently read with a teacher and says, well, when I really understand this deeply and see it, what will happen? And basically he passes his hand through a wall, sort of like,
Right.
as like, oh no, these things can't happen. But I don't know. I think I know for myself, I've had to be sort of brutally honest about where I am on the path of wisdom, or I can
Yeah.
find myself slipping down this almost delusional path.
Right.
And I've seen other students do it too. So,
Right.
And I don't really know what to do with that. That's the kind of thing to turn to the teachers
No.
for guidance on. But
It's a great point you make, though, because as you know, I mean, things can get very delusional, with teachers and with students. It gets out of hand. You have to be aware of that. This is why they say when you're choosing someone who is going to be your spiritual guide, say your guru, you check them out thoroughly, very, very carefully. Really get to know them. And have trust in them so that there's no, the rug doesn't get pulled out from underneath you and you find yourself, all freaking out because the teacher isn't who you thought they were,
Before you drink the Kool-Aid.
before you drink the Kool-Aid.
We mentioned that we've been reading this Big Love, this 2-volume set about Lama Yeshe, who was Venerable Robina's teacher, and connected also Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teacher. And one of the things that came up in this is a little bit about these extraordinary powers, for lack of a better word. And he made the comment to another student. Lama Yeshe said to one of the students about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he said, "You have no idea how difficult it is for him to reach down to your level for you to see and hear and experience him." So he was sort of pointing towards, this is an extraordinary being who has shoehorned himself into a human life in order to teach the Dharma. And that makes sense to me in listening to Lama Zopa. If you've ever listened to any of his videos, if you think of it instead of like, why can't this guy just get out a sentence, but think, my God, this guy's trying to translate down this high vibration to our human level, then it becomes much more, makes sense, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever, but
I highly recommend that book he was talking about. It's called Big Love, and it's about Lama Yeshe because the way it is written is beautifully done. The author is Adele Holz, who was one of Lama Yeshe's and Lama Zopa's students, but it's written from there are tons and tons of pictures, and it's a history of the time he left. They left Tibet, came down to Nepal, and then the Western world became aware, and so it's. Throughout it are all of the quotes, verbatim experiences of the students and how the students related to Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. And from the students' views, you're getting this extraordinary picture of what a guru can be.
yeah, I mean,
it's just
really
extraordinary.
a compilation of essays by hundreds of students, so you get a very multifaceted view of both Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa because hundreds of students' voices are just, it's more of that than anything.
Right. And the students' own experiences are pointing to there are some very amazing qualities that these two beings had.
Anyway, I think in a way, kind of circling back to what you were saying, Brian, about not wanting to get deluded about your influence over things. I think the way I would say it is, well, I'm working on upgrading my equipment, and maybe in some future lifetime, I'll be able to walk through walls or pass my hand through a wall. At the level that I'm at, I'm going to completely honor. It's sort of if anybody's been out on the ocean, you got to honor the power of the sea.
Oh, yeah.
Don't screw around with those. You think a 3-foot swell is nothing. Well, get on one and you go, holy shit, 3 feet.
Right.
Ah!
Yeah. I mean,
You know.
basically, Brian, your point is we can become deluded.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware of that.
Well, and then I think, your opening meditation, the reliance on the lineage through this Shakyamuni lineage, I think if we're sincere and if we don't want to delude ourselves, and if we really are serious about wanting to change and really serious about wanting to clear up our delusions, of course, mixed in with all of our normal, I'm perfect as I am, kiss my ass, all that stuff. But as long as we keep that spirit alive of like
fire today.
Perfect as I am, kiss my
it's the cat. I just had a double tea bag cup of tea.
Okay, so going back to where we were, Buddhists say.
Tell me before class to please make comments and ask questions.
Well, because this can be so difficult to pull apart, and I think the discussion helps with it. So Buddhists say that the person is impermanent, and the result of karma is experienced by the continuum of that person. I would say the continuum of consciousness of that person. This reasoning subdues the above concerns. We can observe that karma and its effects work very well when the person is impermanent. If the person were permanent, it would be difficult to explain how an action could produce its result in the future when a permanent person is frozen in time. The person being permanent or impermanent is one of the fundamental differences between Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Yeah. And like I said, I
Can
think,
you repeat that last sentence
Yeah.
one more time?
yeah. The person being permanent or impermanent is one of the fundamental differences between Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Buddhists, of course, say the person is impermanent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now he's moving on to inherent, refuting that there's anything such as an inherently existing moment, which is like in a snap of a finger. I think Lama Pasang said there are something like
Yeah,
hundreds of moments
yeah.
in a snap of a finger. Perhaps even more. Maybe there are trillions.
Fly says 22
22 trillion
trillion.
per second. Yeah. Okay, so here's stanza 69. Just as a moment has an end, so a beginning and a middle must be considered. Thus, due to this triple nature of a moment, there is no momentary abiding of the world. So that which is, when they say momentary, they're referring to impermanent phenomena, momentary. Things that don't remain in the next moment. These impermanent phenomena are the things we see all around us. You know, the people, the environment, our thoughts, our perceptions of things. Although change is the very nature of momentary phenomena, we still grasp at all of these things as if they are inherently existent. And so we grasp even at the moment as if it's an inherently existing moment.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the meditation sessions we've all been to where the facilitators say now, feel yourself in your seat, be present in this moment. And, everybody goes, exhale and be present in this moment as if
What else do you?
there was a this moment. So what we must be doing is feeling the sense of relief of letting go of trying to grab onto this
Right.
moment and just letting ourselves
Right.
abide in the impermanence.
Right.
This must be what is actually going on, but we have this idea of being present in a moment, or like Ram Dass famously, "Be here now." But by the time you're here, and now it's gone.
It's just ever present now.
You're really having a
Yeah.
hard time being here now.
You go there.
It's like means the opposite of what it actually is saying.
Yeah, sort of, right? Sort of. But it points us in a direction, and we have our language, right?
A language, right? We have to use our language. Okay. Also, although change is the very nature of momentary phenomena, we still grasp them as inherently existent. Nagarjuna now refutes this wrong view. Some people will say that a moment is the time when something has arisen and not yet ceased. They accept that a moment does not last for more than the next instant, but that while it does last, it is an inherently existing moment. Nagarjuna says that since a moment has a last part of it, it also has to have a middle part and a beginning part of it. How can it have a last part if it doesn't have a middle part and a beginning part? So a moment is always changing because it has these three parts. Therefore, a moment doesn't inherently abide and it doesn't inherently exist. A moment depends on its three parts. Being dependent in this way, it cannot inherently exist because an inherently existent thing cannot depend on anything else. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good definition of what inherent existence is. An inherently existing thing cannot depend on anything else. If it did, it would no longer be inherently existing. It would be interdependently existing. That's really logical to me. I mean, it completely blows inherent existence out of the water for me. I can see the logic and the sense of that, even though we grasp at stuff as if it is that way. You don't know when it to ever change, but it's going to. It does, moment to moment. Everything changes. And that's really important. That's also, in our relationships, that's an incredibly important thing to remember. Everybody is continually, moment to moment, changing. So if we're getting all fixated on some particular aspect of somebody, all we have to do is wait. And, it's going to change.
I don't know.
It'll eventually change. Maybe,
Maybe that
Change can be slow.
change can be slow.
Can moments be slow?
And we can keep, because we have habitual tendencies, we keep
Since you
replaying
can't
it over and
use
over.
the Perpetual, what does slow mean in that context?
We're
Let's say
having
moment is.
another moment.
What's the name of Elizabeth Isaac? They just know some things.
Well, and yet they are, everything is changing.
I mean, even if you're reproducing your behavior from yesterday, for example, it's still, you're still having to do the work of recreating.
Well, it's also too the wisdom side of things is that you have to also look at someone if somebody has something going on in their life, and you think the person you invite over for dinner, the last time they were at your house, maybe they might have been a mess and causing trouble and being angry. You hope that that's not going to happen, but if you do have a sneaking hunch that that's going to happen again, you don't. They can change, but they can change over there.
They can change at their house.
I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like,
We say,
but
really honor your limits is what you're saying.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like,
Don't
don't
push your
be
bodhisattva
crazy and think you're going to have a different person. I mean, a different set of circumstances. It'll be a different person.
Christopher,
Yeah.
I did locate 8 nice photos. I separated 8 photos from the celebration of life for Tracy. So before the end of class, we could just quickly.
Oh, all right. Okay. Well, we're close. All right. All right. A moment depends on its 3 parts. Being dependent in this way, it can't inherently exist because an inherently existing thing cannot depend on anything else, including parts. When we apply this reasoning to the world, the environment, and its inhabitants, we see that the world cannot abide inherently, even for a moment. The subject, the world with its environment and inhabiting sentient beings, doesn't abide inherently for a moment because a moment has parts, a beginning, middle, and last part. And here we are almost there. Next stanza. Also, the beginning, middle, and end are to be analyzed like a moment. Therefore, beginning, middle, and end are also not produced from self or other. An argument could be made that although one moment has a beginning, middle, and a last part, the beginning abides inherently, as does the middle, and as does the last part. So each of those are inherently existing parts. Nagarjuna counters this by explaining that the beginning, middle, and last part do not abide inherently. Just as one moment has 3 parts, each part also has a beginning, middle, and last part. This is just really like mathematics. You can keep dividing. It's like mathematics, and it's infinite, really.
Well, you could also say the beginning of one moment is the end of the moment that preceded it, and you could get very, or is it the middle of the one that's coming?
Yeah, I mean, but this is again a form of logic, and it's almost, to me, it's mathematical logic. Each of those parts also has beginning, middle, and last parts. Because it is dependent on other factors, in this case its parts, time does not inherently abide. Just as amount of time can be mentally broken down into parts, all phenomena, whether they are large objects such as the universe, or tiny ones such as subatomic particles, all phenomena are made of parts. Anything that has parts, whether these parts are directional, material, or temporal parts cannot exist inherently because it depends on its parts. I remember Geshe-Drapa said, if you get down to the tiniest particle, you're still going to be able to say it has a north, south, east, and west directional parts. You can mentally or even, I suppose you could physically, if you had the equipment, you could locate those parts. And as long as there's anything has parts, it depends on its parts. It does not exist inherently. And of course, when you get down into directions, it's not just north, south, east, west, up and down. You have northeast, north, south, northwest. I mean, on and on and on. It's the same thing. It's like math.
The one thing that has always confused me is in the refuge visualization at the end where you have the wheel with Oma Rapids on the characters on it. You describe, focus on the Om at the 6 o'clock position but in the west, where I think is 6 o'clock is south. So, I'm not sure I ever understood how you get from.
That was based on what His Holiness taught.
I think
so,
it's
His compass.
labels.
yeah, labels.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
You don't wanna.
But it's not an inherently existing Om or an inherently existing West.
Right, I was just saying, I just remember when you say this, it's like,
South from where we are is north from where somebody
Yeah,
else is.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it gets
Right.
all very confusing.
Right. It's not. Yeah. Right.
But yeah.
never mind.
Never
you know.
mind. Never mind.
That all came from His Holiness. Is it time? Yeah. You want to go ahead and show the
I'd
slides?
love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Part of why I want to share these photos is because I want for everybody to feel connected with the place where we are. And I don't know if you can see. Can you see that, Lee? Okay, yeah.
Can you make?
So I'm gonna just scroll through a few photos. This is the nature mandala. I can't scroll through.
All right. So why don't you go ahead and describe it then?
Well,
So we know
there'll
what
be
we're
more
seeing.
pictures.
Yeah,
But
okay.
you can see the photo of Trace. Here's the setting of the celebration last Saturday. Danielle in the foreground. She had her Tibetan singing bowls, and somebody was sharing their story about Tracy. Here's Danielle, and you can see the statue. It's kind of a neat angle. I just thought I'd share that one. Here is just a little snippet of this is Tracy's sister and her cousin,
Yeah,
and I think this is her first cousin once removed.
Yeah.
And
One of
lifelong
her-
friend.
Yeah, lifelong friend.
And many other wonderful people. Her favorite carpenter.
yours too.
All of our favorite.
Brian did, of course, addressed everybody, and this is probably Brian explaining the Heart Sutra.
Yeah, Brian did a very nice reading of the Heart Sutra.
That was wonderful.
I also want, oh no, never mind. This is for Brian Bales. In 1982, I bought a bass amp for a gig. And this bass amp in the foreground and the Shure SM57 have been working continuously since Lee made me get that gig.
I'm still using the snare drum I bought in about 82.
There you go. Can't beat them. Okay, here's the whole setting. I partly just wanted everybody to see the space and the people gathered. This is the nature mandala. You've seen somewhat in the foreground, and here's another view of that. With this is Brian's daughter, Tracy's stepdaughter, and their grandchild is somewhere there. Austin.
I think there was between 70 and 80 people there.
And then here's the next day.
The cat's
The cat.
It's beautiful.
anyway, this is a statue. Many of you know Sue Johnson. Sue had sent the statue, and it's a work in progress. So if you look, we have objects there in baskets, and if you come and visit and want to meditate, we've added a bench. And
Brian put some of Tracy's ashes in the soil along with Tracy's dog Roscoe. His ashes.
but this is the
Where is it located in relation to the house?
okay.
I'm trying
See
to-
where see this one where these are the flags. See the big flags,
Colored flags.
Right.
and that is the pad where the teepee used to be.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then if you went further back to the far, keep going deeper into the property, this is this really kind of almost magical little area that we hardly ever use. We leave it for the elves and fairies.
It was shaded and there was a breeze the whole time, so that was really nice.
But you can see
Nice.
other views. See, looking back into this is one of the cabins, Redbird.
Okay.
Man, it's woods, a wooded area back there.
That's it.
Nice.
I don't think. Yeah, this is looking back. It's just an area we leave it alone.
Okay, we should do our closing prayers. We'll make them quick because it is 12:30. And so
Brian, I'll send you a link to the. I know you have photos, but I have more photos that I have taken. Even to the Dropbox link.
we'll do the two of the dedication prayers. We'll do them all in English and then we'll do the final dedication in English. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And the final dedication. In all my lives, may I not be separated from true lamas, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, fully perfecting the virtues of levels and paths. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara, primordial Buddha. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And so until next time.
Keep those cards and letters coming.
Take care, everybody.
Did I send you?
Great to see you all.
3 o'clock today on Zoom. Tracy.
No.
Stop it.